Subcommittee meeting of December 4th, 2017 at 7:34 p.m. And our first item is approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on November 20th, 2017.
Do I have a second? Any comments, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Questions and comments. Audience comments are always welcome as agenda items are discussed. Does anyone have anything not on the agenda they would like to make a comment about? Okay, thank you. Superintendent's report, kindergarten enrollment next steps.
Yes, here we go. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I know there's been a lot of interest in the steps that are in the process of being taken, or at least planned, with respect to kindergarten enrollment. The school committee did make a decision. The excuse me, policy subcommittee, I should say, of the school committee decided not to recommend to the full school committee a change in policy, because in actuality, at this time, in actuality, the policy is still accurate. It simply says when children are eligible to attend kindergarten. That's all it says. What is the matter under discussion really is the process or the practice that we have been using, which allows parents to have a choice in the matter. But we did agree, and I proposed to the policy subcommittee that we could take a number of steps that do, and concrete steps, things that we haven't done before, that would change the practice that we've had. So we're in the process of finalizing these. We're in the process of planning a parent forum, another parent information session, if you will, to make sure these things are explained and to make the necessary changes in our written details, such as are on the website and such as will be in the packet, the enrollment packet that goes out. So this is a work in progress for Jamie and me, and there is a draft. This document is a draft, sharing it with the school committee for any input there before we finalize it. And I just want to go over these things. It's not an agenda item this evening, but I just want to go over these individual things so that people can see that we are working on real change. So changes that we're proposing for the kindergarten enrollment process for the coming September are providing more information to parents. And typically, this is something that I would suggest we would be doing in November in a more typical year, not even at this point. So as people are thinking about enrollment coming up for their child, more information, particularly around what the kindergarten curriculum is and the standards, which of course are prescribed for us, are, and also with respect to what our teachers and also principals and preschool directors perceive to be readiness expectations. So particularly in those two areas, we think we need to provide more information. We plan to do that both this year and hereafter. Secondly, we will engage outside of the public forum in some sessions that involve our teachers and the preschool educators, the local preschool educators. They expressed an interest in being on the same page with us in terms of their understanding of the curriculum and in terms of our expectations in terms of readiness, and so in a professional development kind of way we will engage with them as well. We will initiate a more formal pre-enrollment process. We don't always know all of the children who are of kindergarten age. Now, we always have received the annual census that goes out to all families in early January and is summarized and sent back to us by Eileen in the town clerk's office. So we have that information, but not everyone is on that list. So we do think it's advisable for our planning and particularly around the budget and planning for numbers of sections and so on, to have a better idea about all the children who are of kindergarten age. So we'll make a greater outreach. Not only will we get information from the clerk, but we will send out to the local preschools and advertised more widely that we would like all parents to respond to us, whether or not they have a child going to private school or a child that is remaining in a preschool, that we will make an effort to get a more complete list there. We actually did something to that effect a number of years ago with the help of PTOs. We had some PTO help, and we put together a little survey and almost hand-delivered it,
Yeah, I remember
by
that.
word of mouth to people that said, oh, there's a kindergartner living in the, and the survey turned out not to yield any information that was valuable to us because it had 3 questions. And the 3 questions were, is your child going to attend the Hingham Public Schools? And 3 options rather than questions. And they could answer yes, definitely, no, and no didn't necessarily mean being held out, but it could mean is attending a private school, or not yet decided. And as you can imagine, there were a few people who said definitely yes, and there were a few people who said definitely no, and then there were a lot of undecided. So in terms of giving us any usable information, so this step will be a little bit more formal than that and ask them actually to connect with us in writing. So we'll see how that goes. But we always have used the census information. So that's a pre-enrollment kind of thing. And the next thing is making a clear statement that we, as educators, and the we in this case, since we're talking about kindergarten, the we would be Jamie and me and the principals, mainly. We believe that coming at age 5 is the right decision for most children. And in fact, I would point out that more than 80% of our students do exactly that. They attend kindergarten at age 5. So because we have that belief, we're very comfortable in making a strong statement, and not only making the statement, but publicizing it, that we are recommending kindergarten enrollment in the year that the child is age eligible, and that we would post that in a variety of places and ways. We'd post it as part of the enrollment packet that parents pick up. We send a press release out that the packets are ready to be picked up and the process is ready to begin. We would include it in that notification. We will send out again to private schools, private preschools, that information. We send that anyway as a main way of publicizing that the enrollment process is about to begin. We would emphasize it there as well. And on our own webpage and through school emails, which really only reach families that are already involved with us in the school setting. So that's something that we have not done before. And we will add to that recommendation the request that any parent who has concerns about the readiness of the child, 1, schedule a meeting with the school principal in the school that the child would attend to discuss the matter further. And 2, we would bring to the school's attention any special circumstance, and that they should bring to the school's attention any special circumstances that support or document in some way the parent concern. And we also will let people know at that point that the school committee, policy committee decision was not to make a change in policy at this time. And certainly we're going to be monitoring this first year of trying a different approach to being more public about what we think and believe and so on, to see how that goes, but that we really can't guarantee that the policy would remain the same for a subsequent year. We want to be fully clear about that, and so we will make sure that that information gets them as well. And lastly, we will track the enrollment numbers. We'll track the number of requests that we get to meet with parents for the reason of discussing deferring entry to grade 6, and the number of those requests that are deemed to be justifiable. We believe that the discussions should take place at the building level with the principal, but to be fair and consistent, that any decisions or recommendations that we would make would be made by a committee that would consist of Jamie and me and the 4 principals. So those are the things we're working on. We would welcome your comments or suggestions. None of them are carved in stone at this point. although getting pretty close. And I would say we are working as well on compiling the list of the readiness skills as teachers see them, because parents seem particularly interested in hearing from teachers, and we'll make sure that happens. And as well, our specialists, and I would suggest that the specialists in terms of the curriculum would be people like Mary Andrews and Dave Jewett. So those are the plans. We're working on them, and I think we're making good progress. And while this isn't all that everyone that we heard speak would like, it really is a big departure from what we have done in terms of the process. So I won't spend a lot more time on it, but you can call me, email me, speak to me at any time. We want to put this to bed fairly quickly because there's a great interest in people actually seeing something in print, and this is the beginning of what that will be.
And when is the kindergarten enrollment happen? In March?
We get the packets already at the end of January.
Oh, end of January, okay.
And last year we tried something a little bit new. Before we had a window, rather long window of opportunity.
Yeah.
And last year we went to something much more compact. This is the enrollment day, and
Okay.
so and that did work a bit better for us. So likely we'll continue with that piece of it.
It was easier. The schools gave it the feedback that it was more concentrated. Like so everybody sort of came in on a day. People could come in other days, but if you were last name between this letter and this letter, you came on this day,
Okay.
and so on. And as opposed to a wide window where they were always waiting for someone to come in the door, by giving people a more sort of finite timeline, it encouraged people to get their material back. And I'm just looking really briefly right now at
And then
when
didn't
that
we
would have
add
been.
the
If it was in March.
pay
I do.
Incentive?
fee? Yeah,
The
We
incentive?
did. We made the
and then
tiered.
what was that? Remember? That was the spring, wasn't it?
Under 25, I
But
think.
the
Well, we'll
date
look that
was-
up, but it's a good
yeah.
point that we can include it as part
Yeah.
of this packet.
So
when
people
we send
understand
that
the
out.
timing of when they have to
Yeah.
make their decision.
And we certainly want to have this additional information or forum, if not before Christmas, like the week after, because we do want people to have enough time to digest
Mhm.
the information. We're waiting on a date for the forum, and we may have to proceed without having the knowledge of all the preschool people who may want to be there. The meeting between the preschool folks and our staff, well, that's an internal one, that can happen at a different point, but.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
I want to comment as well on the All-Town Forum. You've heard a little bit about that. That's a forum that's going to happen. We have a date now, January 31st, and this is something that was proposed in particular by the PTO presidents of all the schools who meet together in addition to meeting at the All-Town Forum. And they brought it to in addition to meeting with the All-Town PTO, and they brought it to that group who supported it and asked if we would be willing, we being the school administration, central office, and the principals would be willing to participate in such a forum. So they're managing how the forum will work, doing the publicity. At this moment, they're checking on the availability of either the high school or the middle school, because we expect and they hope to get a fairly large attendance. And it will be a situation where people will submit areas of concern or topics on which they need more information or questions to this group who are running it, All-Town Forum, All-Town PTO, and they will select the more popular areas of topics and see how it goes. And they will as well moderate the meeting, which I think is a great idea on their part. So we look forward to it. First kind of activity like that we've done in a long time, actually, and we hope that it will go well. So this is really a kind of save the date notice, so stay tuned for the details of which site and what time that will occur. And I also would reach out to you to say, as we were discussing this topic and some goals, we've talked about reinstating the monthly superintendent's newsletter called Education Matters that for a long, long time we had in the Journal, and more than willing to start that up again. What I need from somebody It could be members of the public, it could be you, topics. So what is it that you think parents would like to hear more about? That would be a good topic for a written communication like that, a monthly thing. So that's it on the report.
Okay. Any communications?
I do, under other communications,
Okay.
but do you want me to do that now?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, the other communications is just about, we put together the new annual weather-related notice. It's going out by individual schools. It's also already on our website. Not much change from prior years, however, we did take radio stations off the list. Jamie is the person to whom I offered the news that we are either delaying or canceling or not, and then he has the job of connecting with the different stations, and we felt that probably most people would check the TV before the radio, so we've taken radio off the list. We will keep on our website, and many parents have the opportunity, excuse me, through some of the radio stations that offer a service of sending a text or robocall or something to parents who sign up for that. And
The
we
TV
would
stations,
encourage
right?
that.
Yeah.
The TV stations, I'm sorry.
I checked mine today and it still was active, so I encourage everyone to check the weather part of the website of the TV stations and sign up for the alerts, and they'll send you an email as soon as they get the information, so.
And I did say in the X2 message that went out today, I mentioned this, and, you know, my kind of annual plea that I do get it, that it's very hard when you're a working parent not to get the notice the night before. But sometimes weather conditions or other circumstances just require that I wait till morning. And so my annual plea is it's awful hard to do things on the spur of the moment with only a short notice. And I was a working parent when most parents didn't work, and, you know, I get it. But we have to look at what the greater good is and what we can do in terms of getting our lots plowed and all of those important things. So to the extent that people can have a backup plan, that's really important to do. And maybe a backup plan is getting together with a couple neighbors that, you know, somebody will stay home and be childcare and the others can go to work and you trade off. Or I'm not recommending that particularly, but just do have a backup plan because we can't always give notice the night before.
Great. Okay, so student communications, Emma Quilty,
So everything at the high school is going pretty well. The winter sports have just begun, and almost all the sports are done with their tryouts. In addition, the community center is starting a new program for younger teens to hang out and meet new people, and this will be the first Friday of every month. The senior Stuco members will be facilitating, and they're going to call it the Hub, and it's supposed to be like the idea of like a coffee shop where you can go and talk and have food with your friends. Also, on this Wednesday at 6:30 in the cafeteria, the mentor program will be hosting a gingerbread contest where the mentors can bond with their mentees or the freshman people in their group. But anyone else is also welcome to join any of the groups. You can just reach out to one of the club runners or Mr. Lockheim, the teacher that runs the club. In addition, a group of students will go and help the East School elementary kids build gingerbread houses also this Wednesday. This is a great opportunity to demonstrate respect, teamwork, and kindness for the younger ages that look up to the high schoolers and want to be like them one day. The Hingham High School also continues to help the community, like volunteering every month for the food pantry. And this past weekend for Christmas in the Square, students took their time to do face paint for kids and sell like the candy canes that are very popular. Moreover, Stuco continues to sell their Superfan shirts, so at the end of the year they can donate as much money as they have received to Medicines to Humanity. And lastly, we continue to appreciate the staff with holiday gifts and staff breakfast to show our respect for all they've done for us students at the Hingham High School.
Sounds like people are busy. That's great.
Emma, where is the activity, the Friday night activity, where is that going to be held?
The community center.
At Community Center, thank you.
Okay, so, in keeping of our high school theme, we'll move on to new business. And 6.1, to receive the high school school improvement plan for 2017-2018 and an update of the 2016-2017 plan progress. And Rick Swanson, our new principal at the high school, welcome.
Thank you
Your first
very much.
report, and
All
he
right.
will take us through the presentations.
All right, thank you very much, Liza, and thanks to Emma as well for keeping us up to date week after week with some excellent reports from the student perspective at the high school. It's has been, I think, a terrific start to the current school year, and it certainly has been a thrill for me to move over to the principal's office after 10 years as an assistant principal, and it really has been an exciting start to the school year. And before we get into our goals for the year to come, I have not quite a full year in review. We'd be here all night, but I'm going to walk us through a quick recap of some of the progress we made on last year's school improvement goals. So the first goal, is, as you may remember, was to examine the current practice of calculating and reporting GPAs. This goal is complete, and I'm sure will be very familiar to all of you on the school committee, and likely to anyone who's watching as well, particularly if you were here for the discussion on October 10th when our Director of Guidance, Heather Rodriguez, had walked us through full accounting of some of the changes that will be made beginning this year when our class of 2018 has a choice in the reporting of GPA, and then next year with the class of 2019 when we make a change over to a new system. Our second school improvement goal last year was to foster a positive school climate by providing student workshops on leadership and by providing community service opportunities. This goal also is complete, and I guess in a sense you get some great evidence of that just from the report you heard a few minutes ago from Emma, that this has really planted some important seeds, and we continue to see some tremendous progress along these goals. The report I'd like to share with you actually contains a number of photographs, and I think you can tell a lot from the photos. How well do our actions align with what we say on paper and the things that we had expressed as our goals? What you're looking at there is a photograph of literally a standing room only meeting of our school's climate committee, which was established last year for the first time. Meets in Mr. Lockheim's room. In that photograph, he's the only faculty member that you'll see, although there are a couple of others who are in the far side of the room behind me when I took that photo who you can't see. But routinely, Mr. Lockheim, every other Thursday, is packing his room with a really spirited group of students who are very committed to moving our school further along and establishing the kind of school climate of respect that we've been hoping for. They've done a terrific job. They, I think, were most known last year and maybe really made their name for launching a town-wide community service day. This was in April, on the last day before April vacation. They decided to call it Harbormen Helping Hingham, and they billed it as the first annual. Clearly there's going to be another one this year. People are already talking about it and planning their community service activities. You're looking at all of last year's class of 2017, about 98%, I think, of our seniors who participated in a full day of community service. There's one example of a group who went out to Lynch Field to do some work on the fields. There were many, many other projects all around town, and by all accounts, really a tremendous day in which people had an opportunity, our seniors had an opportunity to get back to the town a few weeks before their graduation. Other examples, and there are so many of them, but I'll just highlight a few. One of the really, I think, hallmarks of our climate committee was to establish a school climate in which our teams are supporting great causes. There's the volleyball team supporting cancer research about a month ago, but our team's also supporting each other. You'll see really a tremendously spirited, largest crowd I ever saw for a volleyball game. That was the same night as the picture that we just saw. But the climate committee, one of its most famous initiatives and popular and continuing into this year, is to encourage our teams to go out and support not only other athletic teams, but also the drama club, music concerts. Not uncommon to show up at the play and see the entire football team, or show up at a concert and see the entire hockey team. We've seen a lot of that over the past year and into this year as well. There's our crew team supporting the green team by helping to, that picture was taken after they had monitored recycling and compost stations at lunchtime. there's many of our football players supporting their T-boy. And if you like, baseball has a bat boy, football teams have a T-boy. They showed up for this kid's first game in uniform. This was, again, just a few weeks ago. Just another hallmark of the type of community that we're trying to build and climate that we're trying to build. First blood drive was held just a few weeks ago at the high school. As you may recall, we sent 40 high school students down to the Dominican Republic in February of last year, and I had the pleasure of joining that group myself, and one of the most memorable weeks that I spent as an educator alongside 40 of our students. Campus cleanups, another hallmark of this initiative to promote pride in the school, respect for the school, and a sense of teamwork. Sneaker and shoe drive that collected over 1,000 pairs of shoes. And one of my favorite examples from earlier this fall, the NEFCure 5K run and walk. That's one of our juniors, member of our junior class in the middle, who suffers from a rare kidney disease, who was supported in this initiative. You may remember, and I think I saw some of you there earlier this fall, when his team raised over $80,000 with the support of a huge group. Those are all Hingham High School students who you see gathered around him on a very, very memorable day. So the pictures, I think, tell us a lot about really the truth in that initiative and the kind of energy and commitment that people have brought to that. Our third goal last year was to complete a self-study in preparation for the NEASC reaccreditation visit in the fall of 2017. This goal also, thankfully, is complete, and a great experience. One, we said to the group when they arrived, or their chair said to us, "It's true, you're happy to see us. You'll be even happier to see us leave." I don't know if that was entirely true, because we had a great group, and we're really pleased with the way that went. You're looking at a welcome sign that was there at September 24th, and here you're looking at the chair of our visiting team, the superintendent at Plymouth Public Schools, in delivering his farewell remarks to us, where he gave us kind of a sneak preview of the report that will arrive at some point. We're not exactly sure when. He told us it would be at least 2 months and maybe as many as 4 or 5 months before we see the report. But we're feeling very confident about the report that we'll get back, and his closing comments were very, very encouraging to us, and said to our faculty in closing, you've got a great school, and we've been so impressed with what we've seen here. So we're very much looking forward to the report, and we're grateful to all the work that our entire faculty and community did in meeting that third self-improvement goal, school improvement goal for last year, in preparing for that visit. Our fourth goal is to create a cohesive plan of support for students struggling with academics. This goal, at least in terms of meeting its action steps, is also complete. I'm sure this is a goal, like the others, really, where we would never say, oh, this is complete and we've accomplished this and the work is over. But we have met the action steps that we had set out for last year, which included publicity around previously existing homework club, free tutoring program that continues every Monday night and is going on as we speak and as we sit here tonight. There's a group in our library that continues this excellent tradition, providing some terrific support to students. Also establishing a peer tutoring program. The photograph was taken on Halloween, as you might have guessed. And by the way, all of the photographs you're looking at were taken from the Twitter feed, which has also been a communication goal for us at the high school. And if you're not following us on Twitter, you could by checking the homepage. There's a link to sign up and follow us on Twitter. There's a Halloween tweet at a side table in the library where peer tutoring is available throughout the day. And so last year we established for the first time an in-school peer tutoring program where students during their study halls can go to the library and meet with peer tutors. Some of them National Honor Society, but not necessarily. We think that's a program that's off to a great start. The third action step there was to create a supported study for students who are regular education students with a program that might be somewhat analogous to our strategies for learning classroom for special education students, but for those who are not special ed students to have an opportunity to pursue a directed study, kind of an improved version of a regular study hall. And you're looking there at some of our guidance counselors who have helped to launch that program, which again we think is off to a really good start and something that we'd like to expand. Our fifth and final school improvement goal for last year was to capitalize on our status as a USED Green Ribbon school. As you may recall, in 2015, Hingham High School earned the distinction as a Green Ribbon school, a terrific follow-up to our earning Blue Ribbon status a number of years before that. And so our goal for last year was to capitalize on that status and seek to participate in an active way in what was scheduled to be a major climate change summit to be hosted in Boston in 2017. And well, the reason the goal was modified, unfortunately, is that the U.S.-China Climate Change Leaders Summit never happened, and it was canceled, largely due to the change in administration. And so the climate change summit that we had hoped would happen never did happen. So we had followed the early action steps of contacting the event's organizers through the mayor's office, and they were very excited to have our students participate. But after the election last November, it became clear that it was unlikely that the climate change summit will continue. Although we stayed in contact with them, we soon learned that the event was canceled. So we modified the goal, and I'm happy to say at least that our green team and our environmental science classes remain extremely active and can point to some major victories over the course of the last year. A few highlights, kind of a highlight reel you'll see here with the photographs. Hingham High students attending, this is just a few weeks ago, the Green Build Conference in Boston. Mr. Kloon, our electronics teacher, had brought them to that conference. We continued the Green Week tradition, which has become a cherished tradition every March, a week-long series of themes, which had brought in guest speakers. There's our state representative, Joe Moschino, with Hingham High School students. She had come to present on some environmental legislation that's pending before the Massachusetts state legislature. Continue to reward random acts of greenness in our cafeteria. There's a table that was found one day to be the greenest table in the cafeteria as determined by a count of reusable items. I think they had 4 or 5 reusable items per person at that table, and it set a great standard for what we hope we see throughout the cafeteria. Celebrated Green Apple Day of Service with gardening projects in the school's garden, which continues to grow. Just celebrated our 10th annual school-wide teach-in on environmental issues, and there you see a couple of staff members from Holly Hill Farm and Cohasset, longtime supporters of our green team, alongside Hingham High School students doing some fall planning. We do that on America Recycles Day. There's our green team advisor, Mr. Woolley, who continues to do a great job, and I'll pass the torch to him and sort of moving from assistant principal to principal and finding my schedule a little bit more hectic this year. And with less time to advise our green team, Mr. Woolley has taken over and doing a great job. Continue to run the Slash the Trash program, which has been another hallmark of the green team, where every one of our sports teams takes a day to supervise the compost and recycling stations in the cafeteria. Our football team this year turned in their best performance ever in the Slash the Trash competition. And our dance team last fall accomplished the elusive perfect score in the Slash the Trash competition, which is judged by how many things can the custodians find in the trash at the end of lunch after 1,200 plus students have come through, how many items that should have been recycled or composted. And one day last fall, the dance team achieved the perfect score, and nothing, not one item was found in the trash that could have been composted or recycled. So we're making great strides there. I had wondered if that could ever happen in any high school anywhere, and it has now actually 3 times since they did it for the first time. All 3 times have been by the dance team. So I will say they've got a secret that no one else has quite figured out yet. Very impressive. So we'll see if they can do it again in the winter. So those are our school improvement goals for last year. Our school improvement goals for this year, in the year ahead, our school council actively working at the following 4 goals. The first is to explore ways to expand service learning opportunities for HHS students. And the second goal, these are really inspired by our experience of the past year, and this is similar but not precisely the same, to foster a positive school climate by expanding community building opportunities. Last year we talked about community service opportunities. We see a link, but maybe a slight difference in terms of community building opportunities. And then our final 2 goals for the year ahead, to investigate renewable energy options, including solar. This has long been a dream of our green team and others in the school. We'd like to take a more careful look, a more systematic look at the possibilities that might exist in terms of improving our infrastructure and perhaps leading to really good cost savings, as well as improved sustainability. And then finally, to engage in a systematic review of some school disciplinary policies in the year ahead. So that's where we're headed, and we hope we can build on what I think is really good momentum from the past year. So that's all I have for you. Any questions that anybody wanted to bring
No.
up or comments?
Questions, comments?
Just great, and congratulations on the superb job that you're doing, keeping up with the positivity. I read your profile on the Hingham Journal. I like you're extremely optimistic that you would like to be the #1 high school in the state, and go for it.
That's right. Let's dream
We
big.
can do it.
Dream big. I
Thank you.
think it could happen. Right. Thank you very much, Carlos.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? I had 2 comments on from last year's goals on the directed study program.
Mhm.
I think that would be great to let parents get a little more publicity about that.
Mhm.
Because, as you hear about those students that have challenges here and there, what are the resources available? And that's another great resource that is getting going, and
Right.
share that with people.
Yeah.
And
No, thank
get
you.
that
Try to
out
be
there.
creative and look for as
Yeah.
many ways as possible. I think this does have really good
Yeah.
potential.
Great idea. And then on the goal for this year on the discipline policy, I think that's great. And we worked the past years on the memorandum of understanding with the police department and upgraded that and updated that, upgraded it, but, well, we did upgrade it too, but updated it, and I think this is a natural progression. Will you have some focus groups or interaction with students and parents to get their feedback throughout, once you get into the process? That was something I didn't see on
Yes, I think,
the piece of paper.
certainly in terms of school council addressing that, we have the largest school council. I
Yeah.
think the high school that we've had over the course of the last decade, which will bring together around that table a good cross-section of students,
Okay.
parents, other community members, and teachers.
Okay.
But I think it's also entirely possible that we may decide to look for more input beyond that group.
Okay.
And that's a discussion actually that will continue this Wednesday night and the first Wednesday of every month over the course of the remainder of the year, as we sort of pick out which particular areas do we want to focus on in terms of which areas do people think may need some updating. One of the hot issues certainly recently, and we've had a number of communications about this, has been around the idea of students' use of vaporizers, e-cigarettes, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Does our policy need to be re-examined in light of new sort of new technologies? It's not cigarettes anymore, really, for students, and,
Yeah.
and do we need to adapt our language and thinking around that? And it may be that we survey a broader cross section of students or parents to get their input on that.
Okay.
Rick, who's on the school council now?
Yeah, we have I think we have 4 teachers, 3 or 4 parents, 3 students. We have 3 other community members who are not parents
Oh, that's great.
as well. So very excited about the group we have. A number of new faces, a couple of returning faces, but a whole bunch of new first-time participants in our school council.
That's
Should be
great.
fun.
Good. Emma, do you have anything, any insight to share with us on how you see the culture going at the high school or changes past couple of years?
Like what he said, that the different policies that might have to be adjusted through the vaping and the e-cigarettes. But not much you can really say until it's put into place, I guess.
But what about the culture in the high school? Do you, with all the community engagement that's going on, do you see a positive change over time?
Yeah.
Good. Great. Good.
I
Anybody
think,
else?
sorry,
Michelle?
the climate committee, Ben does do a phenomenal job. I've been to several of the meetings last year and a few this year. And I think one thing that's sort of an offshoot of it that maybe wasn't planned, but I think is helping a lot at the high school is just that community service and sort of not thinking so much about yourself and looking outward. I think it's helping a little bit with the stress level and the anxiety, which I think is, important to teachers, parents, us, everyone. So I think that's sort of an unexpected benefit that has been seen there, which I think is great.
Right, yeah, really positive, maybe unintended consequence, maybe partially intended, but I would agree with it. And I think one of the keys to their success has been the quality of student leadership there. Mr. Lockheim did a terrific job in getting people into the room and providing kind of gentle guidance for the group, but so many of the ideas are emerging from the students themselves, and that has really been a key to their success. And they have really been change agents over the past year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be exciting to see what they do next, and it should be fun to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
That's great. Great. Well, thank you very much.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
thanks,
you.
Rick.
Now, on to our next high school topic.
Wow.
6.2, to receive the report and presentation for the class of 2017 college testing and placement. So this is this past year's graduating class.
Right.
And Heather Rodriguez, our Director of Counseling, is going to take us through all of the test results and college results and et cetera, postgraduate plans.
Exactly. All right, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. This kind of report doesn't lend itself as well as Rick's report to pictures, so it's not as picture-rich as his was. It's a little more graph and chart of a report, but we will go ahead nonetheless. So this is basically, it's a snapshot of the college placement testing taken by the students in the class of 2017. Thank you. Clearly, the individuals in the class, any graduating class, are more than just their test scores. That's not how we value them, but that is just one kind of common marker of how well the class is doing, and just one point of data that we can use to describe them. So we will do, I know this is very small, probably from far away, but this year we have 96.3% of our graduating class went on to further their education. So 92.5% of that was to four-year schools. That's been pretty consistent with where we have been, even a little higher than it has been in the past few years. 3.1% of the students decided to go to a junior or specialized school, so that could be a two-year college or a technical institute or something that was providing further education, but not a four-year college. And then we had a couple kids go to prep schools, so that makes up the 96.3% of kids who were continuing their education. Then we had a small cohort go to the just straight to work for employment, to the military, and then for either a gap year or other program before they may continue their education. And 1.7% of the class was undecided, so they did not yet have concrete plans for us last May when we took all of this data. So now we hop into the testing portion, and the SAT for this graduating class was the new version of the SAT. So there is no longer a writing section. There is just reading and writing combined into one section and a math section. So each section is from 200 to 800 scoring, with a total of 1,600 possible points. And that is some of us who are a little older with the older versions of the SAT it was always a 1,600. There was a little stint where it was 2,400 for a while, but now we're back to the old days with the 1,600. But they have revamped the test quite a bit. They've made it more user-friendly. It was released for the first time in March when this graduating class was juniors. So there were a few students who did take the old version of the SAT, but the vast majority of them took the new SAT. So all of the data that I'm reporting is based on the new SAT. The College Board has made it very clear that we cannot compare, even though the scales are similar, we cannot compare the mean score data to the old version of the test. So I know in the material that I provided to the school committee ahead of time, there is a historical chart that has, what the scores have been. We just have to be very careful saying that although it looks like it might be on the same scale, it's not. There are different benchmarks, so we can't compare it. So this year I didn't include, our mean score went up or our mean score went down, because this is our first kind of baseline year for this type of test. What else? So they have changed the benchmarks that they test, and Nationally, 48% of students in the class of 2017 who took the new SAT met or exceeded those new benchmarks, and in Hingham, 83% of the class of 2017 met or exceeded the benchmarks. In the state of Massachusetts, 56% of the cohort did so. So we compare very well to the state and the nation like we do on most things. But that's good to see, even with a complete revamp, that we've continued that. And in the report that you had ahead of time, there are links to the College Board's new benchmarks and what those mean. So there's a lot of information that the College Board gives us, which is nice. This is just another slide with a comparison of the pre-March 2016 SAT with a new SAT. There is still an optional essay section. Most colleges will require it at some point, so we have most of our students take the SAT with the essay at least once, but may not take it every single time they sit for the SAT. So most of our students will take it either 2 or 3 times. Usually they just take the essay section once, and then their score is what it is. And that's more information on the differences between the old and the new version. So it's a little bit shorter unless you add the essay. They're trying to focus more on curriculum content knowledge that students have learned throughout school versus the general reasoning ability, but it still is a reasoning test, which we will see is a little bit different from the ACT coming up. All right, so what everyone wants to know is, how did we do? So the mean score for Hingham combined out of 1,600 was a 1218. You can see that that is significantly better than the Massachusetts state and national means. Then we broke down the mean score of the reading and writing section and the math section. And then this year we're starting to look at students with accommodations who took the standardized tests and include some data for that in our report, and you can see how the means compared there. So the group that's labeled standard would be the standard version of the test without any accommodations. The group labeled accommodations would be students who took the test with some sort of accommodation, and then compared to the total group. So accommodations are not just learning disabled students. It could be students with an impairment on a 504 plan. So accommodations could be for a health disability, for a medical issue. So it's not just strictly special education students, just so that's clear for everybody. And the accommodations that a student may get could range from extra breaks to extended time, to a reader or a large print. So there's just a variety of accommodations available. And it's important to note as well that those accommodations are not given by the high school. They have to be applied for independently through either the SAT or the ACT, and they make an independent decision based on a bunch of information that they ask for. So the school helps the family apply and submits the application, and then the College Board or ACT makes their independent decision. So just because a student may receive accommodations with us at the high school doesn't mean they necessarily will receive them on the College Board or ACT test.
How long does that take, that process?
It depends. The College Board says it could take 6 to 8 weeks. Sometimes of the year when we submit, it will take a couple of weeks. Sometimes I've had it come back in 2 days. It depends, I think, on their volume. Sometimes it will depend on the difficulty or the amount of documentation that they may request. When it is more straightforward, a student is on an IEP or a 504, has been receiving accommodations, has a neuropsych test that's within the past 5 years, and kind of all the ducks are in a row. It can be a little bit quicker, where if it's a psychiatric or psychological disorder, though the testing corporations still want things to fit in nice little buckets, and you may not have a neuropsych test to tell you that you have anxiety. Or in the past, we had a student with a visual impairment. They still wanted a neuropsych report, and we had to kind of go back and forth with them and say, that's not going to tell you that she can't see. But nevertheless, we had to go back and forth and provide some documentation. So in some of the more nuanced cases or some specific disorders, they want some documentation that isn't always readily available, and it may take a little bit of time. But as we're submitting the application, pretty quickly it will tell us, yes, everything is submitted and it will go through, or no, there's further documentation required, and will give us a list of what that further documentation is so that we can go work with the family to gather it.
When a score is reported to a school,
Mm-hmm.
is it does the school also inform that there was an accommodation?
Nope, that's illegal. That you cannot be flagged like that. So we just pull this data out, but when a score is reported, no one will ever know whether that was a test taken with accommodations or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So, moving into subject tests. Subject tests are 1 hour-long content subject-specific tests. There are about 20 of them offered by the College Board. It's only the most competitive colleges that require or typically recommend them. So we don't have a huge percentage of our students taking them. Last year we did have 62 students, which was 21% of the class, take a subject test. And there were 292 students in the class. So we did have 2 students with accommodations take the SAT subject test, and obviously we can't report means out separately for those students because they would be very easily identifiable. But we did have, they each took 2 separate tests, so there were 4 total tests taken by those students. And so specifically in biology, the biology comes in 2 forms. Biology E, which is ecological, and biology M, which is molecular. Our curriculum doesn't really lend itself to either one. It's very aligned with the MCAS, obviously. So there is some extra study that needs to go in if a student does want to take the biology exam, and students are encouraged to do that independently. Typically for us, it's honors level students who will take the exam, and those teachers will talk to the students about it and encourage them to, kind of meet with them separately to find out what is on the test and see what they need to do, and what topics kind of don't align or do align that they may need to spend a little bit more time on. So our students will take the biology SAT subject test after their freshman year upon completion of that class, as opposed to in most of the rest of the country, students will take that during their junior year. So that's just an interesting note. So this year we had 40 students take the biology E exam, and there was a mean of 652. Last year, 31 students took that, so there was a little rise there. The molecular focus test, we have seen a big decline. I think 3 years ago there were 8 students who took it. Last year there were 3. This year I think there were only 2. So we're not reporting a mean because there are just not enough kids. And our class really doesn't line up with that test much anyway. Chemistry is usually taken by students in our sophomore honors chemistry class. So that would be upon completion in their sophomore year. As you can see, the mean shot up this year to 709, which is nice. And 22 students took this exam, and 25 took it last year, so that's relatively the same. Moving on to English literature, there was a mean of 637. 20 students took it last year and this year, so we went up a little bit there. The state average went down by 5 points, and the national mean increased by 13. We went up, so I think we still are comparing nicely there. Math level 1, there are 2 mathematics subject tests, math level 1 and math level 2. Math level 1 does not go as far into math as math level 2 does, so math level 2 is a little more difficult. For the math level 1, 655 was the mean. We had 17 students take it this year. Last year we had 27, so that's a little bit of a decrease. Not sure why that is, and we'll see if that's a trend after next year or if that was just kind of the kind of year that it was. The state average stayed about the same as last year, and the national average went up a tiny bit, about 6 points. For the math level 2, we have continued high performance at 696 for the mean. 31 students took it last year, 31 students took it this year. So I don't really see that kids were taking the math level 2 versus the math level 1. Those kids I don't think migrated to the math level 2. And then the state and national means are pretty consistent. Next we have physics. The mean dropped a little bit to 676, but it's still high achieving. 20 students took it this year, 18 the previous year, and the state and the national means stayed pretty consistent. Then moving over to the humanities, U.S. history, mean of 703, which is great. That was a big jump as well. 40 students sat for the exam this year, and 28 did last year, so that was a big increase. Usually when we see a bigger increase in the number of students, the mean might not rise as quickly, but you know, with increased students, the score increased, so I think that's pretty impressive. And the state and national means also rose about 20 points as well, so kids did well on that test in general. And then world history is the big mean score, up to 754 from 637. So I think we had a lot of world history buffs in the class of 2017. Fewer students took the test, so there were only 10 as opposed to 15 the year before. Typically, we will see these students also take the AP World History exam, so you'll see a little bit later. The AP mean score out of 5 was a 4.46, which is really great, and they had a 100% pass rate, which means they got a 3 or above on the AP exam. So they did really well on both SAT subject test and
there was a really good teacher.
Absolutely.
So Heather, is this just, like for instance, world history is taught sophomore year?
Right.
So is this just the class of 2017? You're
Correct,
reporting?
when they
Okay.
took it. Right.
Okay.
So when I'm
Right.
saying this year or last year, I mean like
It's
this
just
year's
those
class,
kids.
that
Okay.
cohort.
Got it.
So not last year's sophomores. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that I was actually saying that in my head. I'm like, I should mention that at some point, so that's clear. But yeah, this is all based on the class of 2017 cohort, not the testing year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, moving along to the ACT. The ACT and the SAT, just to back up a little bit, are both college entrance examinations. Most colleges, I'd say 99.9% of them, will accept either one. They do not have a preference. The SAT used to be more popular on the coasts, and the ACT was more popular in the heart of the country. Now things have opened up, and colleges really don't have a preference. It's whichever test the student wants to take. It's more curriculum-based. It has an English, math, reading, and science sections, and it's scored from 1 to 36. So very different scoring than the SAT. We now have 156 students taking the ACT. So just about 10 years ago, we only had 55. So that number has grown quite a bit. And our average scores compare really well to the state and to the nation. Our ACT means went up across the board in every single area. And then for our students with accommodations, the ACT Corporation actually provided us a little more data than the College Board did. The College Board kind of revamped the way it reported data this year. So they actually gave us state standard testing and accommodation testing information. So I included that. So I just think that's a helpful reference point. So we had 10 students take the ACT with accommodations, and if you look, their mean scores are pretty comparable in every area. So I think as we continue to look at this data going forward, we will see, does that mean that the ACT is a better test for students who need accommodations? Or are students with accommodations drawn more to the ACT than to the SAT? It's a question that I think will be interesting to look at now that we have that data going forward.
Interesting that we had the same percentage of students with accommodations as the state
Right,
percentage
right.
for quantity of students. So
Yes. Yep.
that's interesting.
Exactly. So, all right. transitioning into the AP realm. So AP is advanced placement. They're college level courses given in high school. There is a culminating exam in Hingham. Every single student who takes an AP level course must take the exam. That is not necessarily the case in other districts. They're usually about 4 hours long, and they are in specific content areas. They're scored from 1 to 5. 3 is considered passing. 125 seniors took 306 AP exams, but we also have students who are not seniors who take them. So this data is for the 2017 testing year, not just the 2017 graduating class cohort. So in total, 261 students took 516 exams. So the 125 seniors comprised 43% of the graduating class that took at least one AP exam. And this slide shows the mean score for each exam. Just so you know, 22 different exams were taken by Hingham High School students. 17 are AP classes that are offered at the high school. 4 classes are offered through Virtual High School, which is our online provider program. And typically those courses are taken by students for AP courses that we do not offer at the high school, or if there is some sort of conflict and because of when they happen during the school day, maybe 2 of them happen just once a day at the exact same time and students are forced to make a choice. We don't want to say, I'm sorry, you can't take that, so we offer them to take it through the Virtual High School program. And also another note, physics students are just in AP Physics, but they take 2 separate physics exams. I think the College Board offers 5 different physics exams. Our students do the Physics C, Electricity and Magnetism, and Physics C, Mechanics exams. So let's see. For students with accommodations, 12 students who took AP exams took them with accommodations, and that represents 4.6% of the AP test takers. Again, too few students took any single content area to be able to report a separate mean for that. But it is good to know that those 12 students took 16 different AP exams, ranging from English literature, English language, European history, Latin, Spanish literature, studio art, and U.S. history. So it's a broad spectrum of different types of exams that they took in classes. All right. There we go. So that's the percentage of AP mean grades 3 and higher. Again, 3 is considered passing, so a 3, a 4, or a 5 is success on the exam. Students can ask colleges to give them college level credit, depending on their performance on the exam. Every college is different in how they award credit. It used to be years ago that a student could take, 5 or 6 or 7 AP exams and actually enter college in their sophomore year because they had so much credit. The cynical part of me says once colleges figured out that that took a year's worth of tuition away from them, they no longer granted sophomore status, but they would let students take English 202 instead of 101, or they could waive their statistics requirement, but they had to take another math. So now they still usually have to take the same number of courses. But there are some students who still get advanced standing, so it depends on the college. You will see here we had some of the, we just didn't have enough students in any one discipline to report a mean, so we used 10 students as that threshold. Computer science was a VHS course. I think there were only 2 students in that class. Environmental science, I think we had 2 or 3. That's all in your materials, your printed materials that you have. Latin, I think we had 6. Macroeconomics, we only had 2. Psychology, we had 5. Studio art, there were 7. So I do have those means. We're just not reporting them publicly. So just so we know about that. All right, our benchmark schools comparison. 2 years ago, we were number 1 in the state of Massachusetts. Last year, we were tied for number 2, and this year we are number 3. So hopefully this is not a trend, but it's still very high performance. So I'm not that upset about it. The only schools that did better
than we did as a district were Westford and Lincoln Sudbury. Westford gave 695 tests and had a 97.6, 3 or above pass rate. Lincoln Sudbury edged us out by 0.2%. They had 95.2% pass rate. We had a 95. So I consider that a tie for all intents and purposes. But that's how we do according to our benchmark schools, and we are the best out of our benchmark schools. The state usually does a similar reporting for SAT scores. They do not have data for this graduating class. They're still 2 years behind, so as soon as I get that data, I can include that in the report. But we just didn't have that this year.
Heather, quick question.
Yes.
Sorry. And sorry if it was in here, but I didn't see it. Do we know what our percentage of students at the high school taking AP classes is compared to Massachusetts state schools in general, benchmark towns? If you don't have that, I'm just curious, are we above average with AP students, below average?
The state does have that data. I don't have that particular number, but that is something I believe that I do have access to. So yeah, if you want to shoot me an email, I can probably narrow that down for
Sometimes
us.
that's something that has been mentioned in some of the various organizations and agencies that attempt to rank schools. Sometimes that will
Okay.
be a particular
Something that they use.
criterion piece that they use for one reason or another.
Okay.
I assume they get that data from the state, but.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's a good question, because I looked up Westford and Lincoln Sudbury about how big their
Yes.
schools were,
Yep.
and they both are in the 1,600.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Westford's 1,680, Lincoln Sudbury's 1,568.
Right.
So they have more students
Mm-hmm.
than we do. I mean, they still got a better percentage, but based on the number of tests that were given, so you know,
Right, so we-
Westford gave more tests because they have more students.
Right.
Right.
But Lincoln Sudbury, that's surprising, they gave
Right.
fewer tests,
Right.
and they have more
Right.
students than we do, so.
Right.
It may also be one of the schools where you don't have to take the test if you take the class.
That's-
Norway
Yeah.
was like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always,
Good call.
I like
Yeah.
to see not just that they
Yeah.
took it,
Yeah.
Right.
but
Right, yeah.
link that to how well they performed, and
Yeah.
Right.
that seems to be a fairer.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So yeah, there's a state reports, state assessments reports page on the DESE website, which has a ton of data that you can cull through. So yeah, that's something that I can
I'll look
take
it
a
up.
look at.
Okay.
Or together we can. So one thing that the AP program does to recognize students is give certain designations depending on how many tests that they took and how well they scored on all of the tests that a particular student took. So there's different levels: AP Scholar, Scholar with Honor, Distinction, National Scholar, International Diploma. The International Diploma is something that you have to apply for separately, and there's a couple more steps in the process. It's not just a designation that you can earn. So we didn't have anyone apply for that this year. But we had 41% of the graduating class of the AP test takers earn a scholar designation.
Is there a minimum number of tests you have to take?
I believe it's 4. I
Okay.
think that's in the
Is it in the
full
thing?
report.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
It's each level is defined
Okay.
as to what it means. Yep. And then National Merit is based on the PSAT, so that's the test that technically doesn't count, that doesn't go on your record, but students take it usually in their junior year. It has to be in the junior year for National Merit purposes. So this year last year's graduating class, we had 5 students recognized as semifinalists and 8 students recognized as commended students. So commended students are the top 2% of test takers throughout the country, and each state has a different threshold. So if you look at Massachusetts' threshold, it would be much higher than a state like Alabama or Mississippi. So even though a student may score exactly the same, our threshold to be recognized is much higher. We had 292 students in the class, and 4% of the class was recognized. All right, so that is the conclusion of the informational portion of the program. Does anybody have any questions?
It's great, I mean,
Yeah, there was
It's a lot of data.
Yeah, a lot of data. I know, which is kind of fun to
Yeah.
sit and pour through, but there's a lot you can discover. So thank you very
our
much.
top students did quite well. I will also note that Heather provided us with the list of reported college.
Yes. Yes. College
places.
attendance and college
Yeah.
acceptance data is all relied on by student self-report because some colleges do provide that to us directly, but the vast majority do not. So we rely on students to tell us truthfully which schools they got into, which schools they didn't get into. So that is in the report as well.
And I did note, there were some people who are attending some very good colleges and didn't tell us that they are attending there, so. Do you know how many different four-year colleges are, did you add that up?
I could. I don't have that on the top of my head, but that is something that I could.
But it was
Attended or applied to?
attended.
Okay.
There were three, the thing that struck me the most from that
There's
report.
there's a long
Yeah.
list. It's a wide variety,
It is.
which I think is something very important for our community to know, that our students are going all over the country and to
And out of the country.
out of the country, and a very wide range of schools.
Mm-hmm.
Good schools, great schools, and schools that are very appropriate for the student.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good to see that, it's not just 15 schools.
Right.
There's a
No, it's very
long,
broad.
long list of
Mhm.
lots of different places that people are going,
At
which
least
is,
120 on
Yeah.
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was 3 pages long.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
at least,
the thing
right,
that struck
yeah.
me the most, and I had said this when I looked at that report last week for the first time, when we got our packets, of the 3 pages of schools listed, almost 2 full pages, only 1 student from Hingham was going to that school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed to think that so many students have the fortitude to be the only kid going to a college. That actually
Right.
really spoke to me, that
Mhm.
almost 2 pages of 3 pages of schools,
Right.
only 1 student was attending that
Right.
school.
And there could be other
That's-
Hingham
that's
students there from
wonderful.
past years,
Yeah.
but right, they're not going in a cluster of 7 to
That
the
really
same school.
impressed me.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and when I first started working here 17 years ago, that there was definitely a smaller cohort, and we were like, there's a southern part of the United States and there's a western part of the United States, and my own experience, I would have rather died than go to school within driving distance of my home. That was just my personal preference, and almost every single kid was like, I need to be able to get home within 2 hours. Okay, we'll go with that. And now that's definitely changing. Which is interesting because there are a lot of good schools out there in a wide range, and it's not just because the school has an amazing reputation or a good football team, but there are some really good targeted programs at certain schools that you may not know about the school, but it has a great engineering program or, ceramic arts program or something. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's great to see the wide variety.
Yeah, that's something I think would be productive of sharing with students, parents,
Mhm.
that there's lots of choices out
Right,
there.
there's a big world
and
out there.
Find the right place for you, and
Yes.
that's where you'll be happy.
Right, and that's what as a counseling department, we try and hammer with the kids, is it's all about fit. Just because if you've heard of the school doesn't mean it's the best school for you. Just because your best friend is going there doesn't mean that you will love it just as much as they do. There's a lot out there. So, yeah.
Great. Anybody else?
Just relate to your staff. I mean, obviously we appreciate it what everyone does, but the guidance counselors, they do a fabulous job. And my 2 boys are very appreciative of their service.
Great. Thank you very much. I will relay that to them. They will be happy about that.
Great.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank
No?
you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Heather.
Okay. So 6.3, to receive a draft of proposed superintendent goals for November 2017 through October 2018 and act as appropriate. We had reviewed these last time, and I know that goal number 3, there was some clarification.
Yes,
on.
I did meet on, what day did we meet? Friday.
Friday.
With members of the community outreach committee, and we discussed, in particular, goal 3. There was some discussion about that at the last meeting, and so the vote was deferred, and so there were several changes here, and therefore this one slide with this, you saw last week a slide that simply had all the other goals, but I thought because we made changes that you should see all of the different wording. And the other goals have remained the same, so this is a district improvement goal as opposed to a self-improvement goal. And it's mainly the wording that I think clarifies what my intent with the goal was originally, which obviously didn't come through in the wording that I used. So I think we came to agreement that this was an improvement, and mainly around that the goal itself as opposed to the individual steps. So working with members of the leadership team to form a work group, a task force, to look at options for standardizing access, whether that be by parents mainly, I think is a target here, but also students, access to homework assignments and upcoming assessments so that parents can assist their children in terms of reminders and that kind of thing. And then the action steps are there. We'd have a group that we form working with the leadership team. Leadership team consists of all of the principals and assistant principals and directors and resource people, and a number of individual members such as Joe Andrews, the athletic director, and so on. And so these are all of the teachers, the staff that work in a leadership way, and that this goal, this kind of a goal, was certainly mentioned as part of the introductory panel at the time we did the self-study presentation to the visiting team. So there is obviously some interest at that level, and therefore I was confident I could commandeer some membership on this committee. So form the committee, look at what other school systems do in this regard. You know, do they use a specific kind of software? Do they create their own kind of electronic platform for providing this to parents, or exactly what do they do? And I think we'll find that things are all over the place. And then collect data from communities that are successful at accomplishing this. And I would obviously schedule the meetings and develop agendas and the meeting packets, and that's ongoing throughout the year. And then develop more than one, hopefully, but several different models that other districts use, or that members of the task force come up with in terms of their own creativity. And then with more than one model to work with Jamie and the principals so that we can review options and get some additional input for faculty and parent and student feedback, and then produce a report of our findings, including recommendations, next steps, whether we would be looking for a pilot and therefore a timeline for some later implementation, or a plan for implementation. And some of that, of course, would involve whether or not there's budget that would need a longer period of time to implement or not. But really working from the ground up, using the expertise and the interest of the staff that we have. And this is mainly because it relates to assignments and awareness of upcoming assessments or any projects, that kind of thing. It's mainly an issue for the secondary level, so we'd be looking for input from middle school and high school teachers and students, and it'll be interesting to find out what the students say, whether they're happy with the means they have now, which are varied, and that presents a challenge for some people, some parents, and perhaps some students, although we haven't heard that concern from students. We have heard it from parents. So anyway, it's an effort to move forward and doing it in a way that we have teachers and students and parents, the impacted parties, working with us as opposed to someone else simply making a statement or a policy or a requirement. So I'm comfortable with this as a goal. I think the wording is better, and we're happy to move forward. There weren't any other specific suggestions that were made on the other goal statements, so they remain as they were in the draft. And according to the education evaluation process, the whole state process, with respect to teachers, they set goals, and those are reviewed by their principals. The principals and directors and other central office set goals, and those are reviewed by me. The goals for the superintendent are that I consult with you and we come to consensus, which I think we're at now, but that we kind of formalize that in a vote, and then that becomes part of the process for the evaluation that we've just completed.
So,
could I mention one more thing?
Yeah,
There
sure.
were some other comments that came into, this was a discussion of the wording of this goal and what it meant and where it came from and all of that. But there were some other comments about could we, incorporate in this something about communication and so on. And so I made some comments at the beginning of the meeting that I think address that are wants to communicate in better ways or, well in process. We've done the forums for the kindergarten. We have another forum coming up. We have the All-Town PTO forum. I am very willing and wanting to do the columns, reinstate those columns that we had for many, many years. I need ideas in order to do that, but so we are reaching out in different ways and very much in ways that provide information to parents in ways that they perhaps wouldn't want on the website, where people are looking quickly at things on the website. Maybe that's not the best way to communicate about things, and so I think that I certainly can say we're reaching out and try to satisfy people's needs and wants for information. So even though that isn't incorporated here, that is something that was in process anyway.
I think I understand the goal better. That's what I thought that it was,
Yeah.
but the words articulate what I was thinking, so thank you for clarifying that and the input. So if we can have a motion to
I'll
set
make
the
a motion that
goals.
we accept the proposed superintendent's goals for November 2017 through October 2018 as they are outlined in our packets.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we will keep working with these according to the superintendent evaluation plan. 6.4, to discuss the process for review and establishment of tuition fees for Kids in Action, Hingham Public School integrated pre-K and full-day kindergarten for 2018-2019, and for the 5-year financial vision. So we have to have a discussion about, do we raise tuition fees? So we're gonna just have the discussion tonight. We'll vote at a later meeting. But we have had some fees come through policy, but I felt this was budget related, so we'll just do it as a full committee for discussion. And last year, we raised all of them by, I believe, 2% or so.
Yeah, rounded.
Yeah, and we heard some feedback from townside people that, well, we know that the school budget averages a 4.5% increase. So why didn't you raise them 4.5%? So, and, we.
Can I say something to that?
Yeah.
So, last year when we discussed this, I felt like it kind of came in a bit late. We had to make a decision very quickly, and I was not, and Carlos neither, there when you set the original tuition cost. So I would like to actually understand more of the thinking behind how you came to the numbers you did originally. And then,
Which one, are you talking about a particular one or all three?
no, when
of
you
these?
came up with the tuition number when full-day kindergarten
For
was,
full-day kindergarten.
yeah, when it was implemented,
Mhm.
you had to come up with a number. I would actually like to have a better understanding of how you came to that number. When we had the discussion about raising kindergarten tuition fees, it was a little late to start getting into how were those numbers created. We didn't really have the time. So we went and took the 2% because that just seemed, we knew we had to do something, but we didn't know really where should we be lying. So I would actually like to just have more information about how did the original school committee that was on that, in that year when full-day kindergarten was implemented, how did you come to that tuition number? How did you calculate? Because I know that was not an easy number to calculate either. And then...
Well, I think there are two different things. The tuition number, we mainly looked at what other communities were doing. We had a grant from the state, not to fund the program per se, but to provide, as a planning grant. And we had to, in order to get that grant, we had to keep it under $4,000. We looked at what other communities were doing and came up with a figure. What was more challenging was the scale that we used, the sliding scale. And again, at the time, with respect to the sliding scale, we had that grant, and one of the requirements of the grant was that we had to use their sliding scale. They had to be a sliding scale, and we had to use it. And so that is what we used in the first year. But I think that the challenging part was more the sliding scale than it was coming up with a figure, knowing that you had to be under 4,000, wanting to be, affordable. We were really hoping that the majority of our students would be able to go. We were interested in that sliding scale because we thought that would facilitate that.
And we did do some modeling of if, depending on estimating how many would pay the full amount versus who would be in a sliding scale.
Actually,
portion of
Liza
it.
did a lot of that.
And then we backed
calculating
out
of data.
what was the incremental cost of running the program, because we accepted the fact that we provide half day for free, as we had always been doing, and then what's the incremental cost, and then dividing that incremental cost across the students, and then integrating the sliding scale. There, believe me, I had about 100 different iterations of where do we come up with the total value. And I think we ended up pretty close to, we were covering the costs based on the number that
The first year
we
cost.
picked.
So it'd be kind of nice, though, I think, now that we have Michelle also on board, just have kind of a recap on how those, let's talk about the sliding scale again, let's talk about how you came to the numbers. The second year, I believe there was no increase made at all. So it was only the third year where there was an increase, correct?
No, this is the third year.
No,
This is the third year? Okay.
yeah,
okay,
we did
so
an increase
It increased
right
last
away,
year.
yeah.
last year we did, but in the year before that was the first year?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the third year that we're in now.
Okay,
so. So, I was the one that asked that Liza put this agenda about fees on this item on the agenda for two reasons. One is that we never used to go to the policy committee a number of years ago for fee increases. But we did come, obviously, to the school committee. But we brought the proposals that we had directly to the school committee, and they were recommendations typically from John and me, but informed, in the case of KIA, for example, by the recommendations of that director to be able still to provide a quality program, and at an attractive rate, if you will. That program doesn't hit our budget at all. So we usually went with her recommendation to the committee. And in the case of the integrated preschool, because that's the only integrated for-fee program that we have in terms of typical children that we need to provide for that program. It used to be, when we started out, for the full day kindergarten component, typical kids, and then also for the preschool. But now it's only that one preschool group. So that we have made recommendations over the year based mainly on the fact that we need to provide typical peers, and whether or not there's a pool of people who are coming along and moderating that to hopefully cover costs of additional kids, but that cost isn't the full cost because we have to provide the program for the students with special needs. So adding to that, unless we were adding so many people we needed another teacher, really isn't much of an increase. But the point is, it was very efficient because it gets busy this time of year. Those people want the tuition figures out there very much by the time they apply for kindergarten, enroll in kindergarten, because particularly with respect to the Kids in Action, we used to have the wraparound program, and they want to know kind of the full thing that they're going to be paying for. So we get into this rush, and so John and I feel we can still allow school committee input, but that we can be more efficient by having, we still would want 2 meetings to present this to you and have some time to think about it and then come back and ask for a vote. But we would save on having to schedule another meeting of the policy committee, and so that was one reason. The full day kindergarten issue is a totally different issue because at some point, because we haven't done this for a couple years now, when we went with the original full day kindergarten process, it was quite frankly the only way we were going to get the full day kindergarten over a 20-year process of 3 different attempts was to make it a fee-based program. And we were very open about that, and we said fine. At a later planning meeting, the entire school committee was not in favor of at the time, was not in favor of a free full-day kindergarten program. There were some people that felt differently about it. But at a future planning meeting, we did get consensus that I should develop a plan for full funding over a multiple year period. So that was a decision of that school committee. You're a different school committee. And the reason that never happened is the very first year that we were to develop a program, multi-year program for fully funding it, was a year that we started with having level services budgets that the town was asking for, and that the committee determined to be something that we should comply with. So that's fine. So that's how we are where we are now, where my belief is we need to have the school committee kind of as a whole, and maybe this meeting, this meeting by itself definitely is not the way to go, but maybe we need to have a meeting just to talk about that topic. It's a very important one, but we need to know now what's the consensus of the school committee at this point as we go forward.
So, and also, so when Dot asked me to put down the fee increases for just next fiscal year, I wanted to add, let's start talking about long-term, where do we want to go with full-day kindergarten, because we haven't talked about it yet, as she said. And so your questions are very relevant. It crossed my mind. I'm like, I should have dug out those reports and all the data too of why full-day kindergarten was even recommended, because I don't know if you guys even saw that background information of why it's so important from an educational standpoint.
But we do have
So-
a good PowerPoint that would be a good way of making that available to you.
So
from those-
besides the background of how we established that tuition rate and the sliding scale, I think it would be relevant
And
to
how we
bring
why
all of
did we
that,
get there in the first
because
place?
that will be, that's part of the story of why would it be then free? To understand why you even have full-day kindergarten as opposed to half-day kindergarten. So I think, and I wanted to just start talking about it, so that's why I put it on here. So I think we kind of have to separate, what are we gonna do about next year? But then we do have to start talking about, in the future, where do we wanna go? Because we're now talking about this 5-year financial vision, and at the far end of that plan, it includes the question about full-day kindergarten, as to how that gets financed.
Because the school committee has almost totally changed from the year that we were planning for that kindergarten. And then it changed a little bit, but so did the thinking of the original group to saying, okay, we should do something for a long-range plan. But then that didn't materialize, and so this year, we had to think that if we don't increase the tuition, which becomes an offset in the budget, then the budget is going to go up in a way that we can't justify is level services. So that was very much the thinking last year about saying we need to go up some, and
But they haven't told us what they're asking for this year, have they?
We haven't heard what the town side is asking for yet. I can remember when we were talking about the 2%, that's what the forecasts, that reports that we get from the town are all, at 2%. But yes, our budgets do go up more than that.
We've been
so.
all over the place on that. Typically, we hear that information at the fall, the very first meeting that we have with the town forecast meeting. And of course, different staffing now, so we weren't apprised of what they were asking of their town departments. But in recent years, it's been the will of the school committee that we do what the town is asked to do. There were other years when the philosophy of the school committee at the time was give us all the needs, do a needs-based budget, and not, and we had one sad year many years ago when times were really tough everywhere, which everyone understood, that we were to present a level funded budget, which is a whole other thing. So we've had times when the school committees operated independently,
Sorry.
and we've had times when.
Can you come to the microphone? Sorry. If Dan Coughlin, who's on the advisory committee, is with us, so he may know some more information about.
Not an awful lot more.
Okay.
I can say that two things. One is the 2% that was used in the past is more of a placeholder. It's not a budget. It's just a forecast. It's a number to have out there, and the entire town gets 2%.
Right.
So that's just that's not to say that that's not that anybody would or wouldn't get that amount of money.
Right.
Again, placeholder.
But I think what we're talking about here is the directions that the departments get from the town administrator.
Right, and this year, we're starting to look at the budget, and it's we anticipate that it's going to be on a level service budget.
Okay.
Not level funded, but level services. I hope that answers the question.
That's more information than
Than
we
we
had.
had before.
Thank you.
So Liza,
Yeah.
a question, with the increase last year of 2%, Dr. Calvin, anyone, did we hear any feedback from the community out there, whether they had any issues with that?
Well, we had a greater allocation last year than 2%. I think what Mr. Coughlin is talking about is the marching orders that departments got in terms of,
No.
but we
No,
all
no,
got
you
more
mean-
than
No, my
2%.
question-
Did parents complain about the raise in the fee
The fees.
for
Yeah.
full-day
Oh, I'm
kindergarten?
sorry, you're talking
That's
about the
okay.
fees.
In a
yeah.
nutshell, that's what he said.
No, we didn't. And in fact, some paid more than the increase because remember, you also acted on
Incentive.
we hesitated to call it a late fee,
Yeah.
but something akin to that, to motivate people to bring in
Incentive.
things further.
Incentive to
Did it help?
apply on
It really
time.
worked.
Yeah,
There were only
and-
about 5 people.
Yeah.
Which was great.
Great.
That's good.
No, thank you.
Which is a
Yeah, so we
huge
did work.
change, by the way,
Yeah.
for
Oh,
kindergarten
good.
enrollment. It really was. It
So
was a
that,
huge
ooh,
change.
can we
That's great.
have consensus to keep that? Okay.
At whatever the rate is,
Yeah.
it's more if you,
Yeah.
Really
more if you're slower, yeah.
Okay.
So, but the topic just needs, for a whole bunch of reasons, needs more than just, what do we do about next year? And I don't know whether there's, possibility, we have that before we have to decide for next year, but it is something that this group needs to revisit. But I will get out for most of you, actually, the PowerPoint that we did at the time when we were recommending the program. Has a lot of information in it, a lot of background about why and who else is doing what, and
I think
And
having the comparables too would be really nice. So what are, cause I haven't seen them, what are other.
Are the other
benchmarks?
towns?
Yeah, what are the other
Okay.
towns, but also what are the local private kindergartens charging? How do we compare? Cause
We-
those are who we're competing against, so I'd like to see.
We
you
have
know, how
that, I
much
know,
of a-
from 2 years ago, so we can probably update that pretty quickly. There aren't that many of them.
no, there aren't that many local,
It'd be nice to
Derby,
have.
Yeah,
St. Paul's,
yeah.
community. I don't know if Conservatory still has a kindergarten program.
Yeah, I think they do.
Well, and from the big picture, it would also be, if we can, I know we have it in the budget, but, just the total number that kindergarten costs.
Yeah,
per
it's
year.
hard, though, that we're now into this for what will be the third year, because it's hard to separate out what are the costs, because we've done other things, such as we increased what was the part-day program from 2 hours and 35 minutes to 3 hours and 10 minutes, literally half the day. So we've changed that, and so there are costs to that. So are they fair to attribute to?
Well, I guess my point is, if we're gonna consider doing free, full-day kindergarten, that's gonna significantly increase the budget ask that we take to the town.
Mhm.
So we have to
That's
consider that.
right. So there's no
and
good
if-
time to bring
No, and if
that
there's any way to sort
bigger
of
cost.
forecast that out
Yeah.
a little bit
Yeah.
for a couple years and say, it was $800,000 this year, it's gonna be 50 now, I don't know if there is any way to do that, but it would be nice to know that as we consider
Yeah.
the impact on our whole budget
Yeah.
Right.
of doing that.
And then there are components that if in 1 year we do free full-day kindergarten, then the following year, the current Chapter 70 formula kicks in and we would get an incremental amount from the state. It doesn't cover the whole amount, but it's something. So,
Right.
so we
They
can.
give us more per pupil cost for.
But if the
full
formula
day
changes,
than a
who
half
knows
day.
how that's gonna go. But that's
We did look at
something.
that.
Yeah,
looked
we
at
did
that,
look
and
at.
It wasn't a big amount of money, it was about.
For us, it was.
But it was like
120,000, somewhere in that range, I think.
yeah, maybe even a little more. But it wasn't the
Yeah.
full, like, if 800,000 is the difference, or
Right, yeah, no.
it wasn't the full
Right.
800,000, but it was a chunk of it.
And
so.
when,
But-
I
but
I
that's
also have
because-
to know if we were going to do it, and it was going to, is there any way to also analyze, if we're not gonna get any more money and we're gonna do it, what are we going to cut to do
Right.
that? What
Yeah.
would we have to give up to fund full-day kindergarten if we can't get any more money and we decide that's what we wanna do? Cause that's a
Well,
possibility
but there are other
too.
possible ways of funding, too.
Yeah.
Just, one thing I would like to see perhaps happen is that, we tie in the increases of the fees with the collective bargaining agreement. Every 3 years, we just negotiate a new contract. So we increase that fee for the next 3 years. So that way, if you have change in the school committee membership, there's no, it's already there. And perhaps that's a pilot to follow.
So that's the cycle of the fee schedule is, yeah, makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll look at that too, and then we can look at for the next meeting, we can have the exact fees. For next, we'll separate next year from the full-day kindergarten long-term
Yeah.
plan, because they are two separate issues. I just threw them all in one line item to talk about tonight. So we'll look at the fees, and we will look at the exact fee with, we'll look at the collective bargaining agreement schedule. I think that's a good idea. And we'll come up with some suggestions of increases based on a couple of different scenarios of what they would be. And then we can talk about it again at the next meeting.
And the state continues to do a sliding scale each year that we can take advantage of. So you would just feed in what you want your overall tuition to be, and then from the scale they put out, they determine, given this is the scale, then given this is your max, this is how it should be divided for the different categories. So that's useful to have. But what we don't necessarily have to have that for the budget that you're going to get on January 1st. Right. We'll just put in what the tuition is and what we charged this year for that. For the other two, what we'd like to do is to present a proposal either next meeting, which we can easily do for the pre-K tuition, but we need to give Kathy some time, so that one might come to us at the first meeting in January, and for a vote then at the next meeting in January. So it gives us a little more time to, do some more thinking about the full-day kindergarten in general, or whether you want to do that. But it was something that we just needed to put on our agenda at some point, and so that's how it got here.
And Kathy may have some rates for the 18th, but she's working on it, but I just want to give her time to get comps and.
Okay, as long as,
make a good analysis.
Yeah, we need to make sure we're in sync with the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as we do it on time for when you need it, that's.
Thank you, and I'll email that PowerPoint around to you.
Yeah.
And did that also have, because I remember at one point there was a list of, that broke down how many other towns, because I remember most towns in Massachusetts charge for kindergarten, was my memory.
Yes.
But there was a breakdown. There was.
Most are free.
Yeah, so
I
that
thought it was the
data is
opposite.
in that report.
It's all in there?
Yeah.
Because I remember.
Now, there've been changes over 2 years,
Because
but
I
it gives you
remember
a
that was
sense.
in there. But I couldn't remember,
And the other thing is, when sometimes you'll hear reported, well, 88% of the towns in Massachusetts have a full-day kindergarten, but in many cases, it's a full-day kindergarten option, and there's often a lottery. And some of that relates to the fact that some communities don't have enough space, and so they want to offer the program, and people pay for it, but it may be for only one class, or 3 classes, or whatever, and they do that by a
We
lottery.
have that information from 2 years ago. It'd be probably pretty easy to update it. But I do remember one of the things that when we decided to charge tuition, one of the things we did decide was it would be available to anyone that wanted to attend. There would be no restriction, or there would be no lottery, because we felt that if we were going to charge, at least it's open to everyone, and that if somebody has a low income, it potentially would be free, because of the sliding scale. So we didn't have that restriction of, if we're even going to charge, and then half the kids can even take advantage of the opportunity. That we didn't feel was fair, so that was one distinction of what we did.
We pulled up the map. 282 communities offer free full-day K.
Wow. Out of.
Many of those are urban communities where there's significant grant funding that was available.
Yeah, they got the initial year grant funding, and then the Chapter 70 kicked in.
Yeah, I would say most of those,
Like
the numbers of
50-ish.
students there are coming largely from the urban communities where there's much more funding than we would ever get.
And that's this year.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. 6.5, to receive winter 2017-2018 coaching assignments. So
These are the winter assignments.
Full team, everyone's hired, which is great. And then 6.6, to receive notification of the overnight field trip of high school business students to the DECA Conference at the Boston Marriott Quincy, January 4th and 5th. It's a new program.
As you voted that
Yeah, it's a new
earlier
club this
in the
year.
year, and it's a pilot. This particular conference is funded somewhat, but I think it presents an example of just how involved and formal a program this is. It's existed forever and ever. And we, I don't think we were ever, even when we had a much larger business department, ever a part of that program. And it's very project-oriented and wonderful program, but a lot of involvement of time and links to the curriculum and so on. So we'll see how we do, because we will be a much smaller group than just about any other town. So certainly credit to the teacher for his initiative and getting involved, very quickly on that. And that helps particularly as a pilot, because we'll know right away whether or not there's going to be sustaining interest of students, first of all, let alone enough what funding may be involved.
Great. Okay, and then we received notification of the appointment of Daniel Whelan. Is that how you pronounce his name? Paraeducator at Hingham Middle School. So welcome, Daniel.
I will mention to you that when I reported that the last meeting we were fully staffed, 2 days later, we were notified that the person that we had identified and that I had met with, that we had given a contract to, declined. And I think I mentioned at the last meeting, her husband was in the military. Well, guess what? And so we've had to go out now having two problems. One is to find a candidate, and then to find a candidate that can come to us in a reasonable period of time while still meeting commitments in the town where she now works. Because this is a leave that, but Rick was able to identify the person. We were able to come to agreement on roughly when she can come, but that left us with the problem of what do we do in the meantime? And so Rick has another suggestion, and we do have someone in-house that we can take over that role temporarily. She isn't licensed in the subject, but experienced, since she went through that program herself as a high school student. And so a lot of things had to happen in a short period of time. And those are the kinds of things that say, okay, whatever I was going to do today, I can't do today because this is a looming vacancy that.
This is the Foods and Nutrition Program?
Yes.
Foods program?
Yeah.
Consumer science?
Well, her particular assignment isn't all about foods. It's child development, for example,
Okay.
and then some of the singleton courses that program offers. So.
Okay.
So anyway, a good credit to Rick for his quick service on something that we thought we had solved weeks ago, and as luck would happen. So there's a plan. Wasn't the original plan, but there's a plan.
Okay, so then we have 48 hours, which brings us to subcommittee reports. So do we have anything other than the communicate? Okay, so we'll
Can I just ask a question? Did anyone else on the school committee receive correspondence from a Linda Churchill regarding a wellness survey?
Yes, I did.
Now that we're
Yes. It was literally today we got it.
Yeah, that's where I'm putting it. It was today. Does anyone know anything about it? Are we in a program to be taking these surveys? I'm just.
So we got, I got it too. It's from UMass Medical School, Linda Churchill. It's a survey for UMass Medical School research study on wellness programs and policies in public schools. You didn't get it?
Not aware of it.
This sounds incredibly familiar. I feel like we responded. and it went to Karen Beatty. This is in the spring.
Well, if we did get an
I feel like
outreach,
it
I
was-
would
yeah,
send
I
it
think
to
I
Karen.
feel like we got something about it in the spring. This could be a new updated one,
Says
so.
the purpose is to identify those programs and policies effective in reducing childhood obesity and to guide future interventions within the school system.
I don't remember that.
So you
but-
know this for the log.
All right. Why don't, okay, so did everyone get it?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So why don't, I'll send this to the two of you
And we'll
and,
take care of
and
it.
Karen Beatty, and you can give
Well,
us,
first of all, find out if it's legit. which we
yeah,
want
you
in
guys
person.
can tell us.
Or if you just follow
I
up to us,
guess-
we'll give it to Karen and.
Yeah, I wouldn't even
Yeah, because I wasn't
probably
even
know how to
clicking on any
respond.
links
Um,
that were sent in something like that.
It's not unusual to get surveys from them as they
Yeah.
do, because they also hold the state's Medicaid contract. So you'll see them do, UMass Medical will do the sort of outreach and surveys, and so it's not unusual, but if you forward it along, we'll take care of it for you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kay, for bringing that up. I was
Yeah,
gonna
thank
ignore it. Okay, so, subcommittee reports. Community outreach met Friday, and they have a good update, important update for us.
I think so.
So Kay's
So
gonna
I
take
guess
this.
to start, for those that maybe haven't been following, on October 26th, a firm called Stacker came and they made a presentation. And I was truly impressed. The presentation really was about all of their services, but specifically on one, which is what they call the discovery period. And the discovery period really is about data research. So they would do a survey, they would do telephone calls, they could do community forums, and they would reach out to staff, to students, to community members, parents, really to get feedback about how they obtain information, how do they use our website, or do they usually go to Facebook for their information, things like that, so that we can find out, do we have all the information that we should be putting out there? Is our website user-friendly? What kind of trends or changes do parents want to see? And are we, modern in that way? Are we sticking to the trends, or are we a little bit outdated and maybe need to look at doing a whole new website? So this really is just, again, a discovery period of finding out where do we stand with parents and community with the technology that we have on communicating. And this discovery period, they said, would basically take about 2 to 3 months of doing all the research, and then it would take them probably another 2 to 3 months to give us their feedback. They had recommended for our school size about a 50 to 75 hour would be their, what they would have to put into to do this period, which we calculated would cost between $5,500 and $8,250. In community outreach, we were all kind of excited to maybe pursue this. I reached out to Alexa, who is with Stacker, and asked, could you possibly start this discovery period next spring? And she said yes, they just need to kind of know how many hours, what's our budget, and they will work with that. The reason why we want to do this in the spring is, again, because it's going to take about 2 to 3 months for them to actually do this discovery period. So we're probably not going to get feedback until the summer. So if we want to revamp our website or do something totally different, it would give us that time to maybe then look into the new year of how we want to react or respond to what we hear and what we find out. So I'm bringing this up tonight because we just spoke about this on Friday. Dot wanted to talk to John. Is this even in the budget, though, to be doing this year? I told you the cost. Can we find the funds to do this? Because it'd be unfortunate that we had to put it off another year.
Yeah, well, it's not in the budget, but I mean, the committee has the building revolving account, in likelihood, end of year funds could handle it, but we don't know until we get to the end of the year. So, but the committee could decide to use a building revolving account to say we have money to fund this project so that we can get it started and, see how the rest of the year goes.
We'll also look at the current budget to see, we've had a number of things like personnel changes and swings, and to see whether we can reallocate from other accounts. So we are comfortable that, yes, we can do that. I think it is important to say publicly if we reallocated where, you have the authority to do that, but I wouldn't want anyone to think that we just have money sitting aside for new ideas that come along. So we will, at the next meeting, tell you specifically where that will come from. And
that's why you also have in your packet the copy of the presentation, also a draft of the work order, how that would look, and a sample, which is called the Swampscott, what is it called? Public Schools Discovery Phase Report. So that is an example of what kind of report we would get back after Stacker would finish this discovery period with us. So
it's good visual appeal,
mm-hmm.
Easy to understand without reading a lot of words, you know, what the conclusions they come to, and I think people appreciate that. And certainly, I'm in favor of it. I was impressed. Jamie and I actually saw that Stacker group, part of a larger Sterling Associates, is it?
Sterling
program.
Technologies.
Sterling Technologies.
And we saw that last July at the conference on the Cape, and both agreed that they want to talk to, and Jamie reached out to them, and they did come here and speak at that level, and we shared the information with the school committee, and there was interest in seeing them.
And they actually are the organization that just revamped the Mass Association of
Yeah.
School Superintendents website, which is unveiling this week.
Yeah, and actually next week at our associate superintendent's
Or
meeting,
Wednesday.
Wednesday, they are coming to our meeting to get the feedback from our group as to what the new website, how it appeals to us as superintendents, and you know, what kind of changes they might want to see made and so on. So we'll see them again on Wednesday.
I think our thinking has been in the past year, you know, we had put some money in the projected capital budget for a new website, but basically we want to figure out what we need. We don't just want to do something that we don't need. So they seem to be much more in touch with what people and able to understand what people want than I think the seven of us could.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all young. They're all younger than all of us, not just me, all of us. That's what impressed us. At the conference, I actually went to the booth, and I looked around and thought, oh, these must be students. There's a selling website. These must be students from the communities where they're working on websites. And then I find out after the fact, no, those are the employees of this group.
Well, I reading the Swampscott Discovery and knowing the response we had from the social emotional survey, I think we'll get a few more than Swampscott got our survey. So I hope that we can accommodate that amount of research, which is, it's always better to get more feedback.
But Cynthia's point is very important, that it would really give us an idea before we spend money on a new website. Do we even need a new website? Can we work with what we have, or do we need to even go a different route because parents are looking for
it's
something
some other
different?
kind of technology for communication that's out there that might be better for
Well, and I
us.
think this combined with your goal, your number 3 goal that we talked about earlier, of looking at what kind of electronic resources are people looking for to gain information, that these work hand in hand practically, and we can learn from both of them.
And
provide
the
the right
fact they
tools
use,
for
in
people.
addition to a survey, because any of us could create a survey that may have no value, but they do forums and talk to people as well.
Yeah.
And that can be educational in both directions,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And that it's teachers too, it's not just
Yes, it's faculty, students,
so then we get everyone's point of view.
parents.
Yep.
So is the idea correct, is for everyone to think about it and then
So, and then probably at our next meeting,
We'll know where it would
Well,
come,
we'll
fit
let
in
you
the
know
budget.
where
Okay.
we would
we'd have to make a decision, do we want to then hire them for the spring?
But we would want action because it is a budget
Yeah.
item
Right.
that was not in the original budget, so we would want you to act if that is your choice.
Great.
Okay. That
We've
was
been
all
working
from-
on this for a long time, so.
Okay,
that's
well, that's
good.
all right now from community outreach.
Okay. Good. Eileen, you have anything
Nothing
Nothing on
has
salary.
changed on salary negotiations.
Cynthia, do you have anything on policy?
We're meeting on December 11th, and a bunch of issues to review. Section 4, talking about wording in the policy for the entrance age, and some other things.
And
Can't remember.
certainly, the information that we've seen recently in the Globe about student
Discuss that.
activity accounts and so on is relevant to
Yep.
our continued work on that topic.
Yes, for anyone out there who read the Globe and what Boston's been going through with student activity accounts, we are reviewing ours as we don't have the same issues that they do. But we've gone through our own audit, and that was something that came down from the state level, so Superintendent Chang was doing the right thing of checking all the accounts. But that's, we're also going through that, as we should, and getting everything in line, but we haven't found anything.
No.
And so, we're good. But policies, making sure that our policies are in sync with all the proper audits, so that's a good thing. Okay.
Long-range
yeah, I was
planning
gonna
will
say.
be meeting next on the 20th at 5:15.
Followed by the building committee, Foster Building Committee.
Oh, they have a meeting right
Has a meeting
after?
that night too, and that's where we're hoping to have some information to
Oh.
share about two things. One being the testing that was done at Foster, the borings. So we'll get that report back, and given that the MSBA is meeting on the 13th, we're hoping to have some words one way or the other about that project, and so that might be a good meeting to attend if we have people in the audience.
What time is it at, Dot? What time is it at?
The meeting with the school building committee is at 7:30, but it follows the long range meeting.
And where they meet? Over here?
Excuse me?
Do they meet right here?
Yep.
Yes.
So, special ed subcommittee, there's a CPAC meeting coming up on December 13th, and we want to schedule something for December, and we're gonna see if we could do it the 13th, but Ed is still away. But we wanted to look at the budget, make ourselves familiar with the budget for the coming season, just so that we can be a little more knowledgeable. And then,
So you're not talking about the meeting with the advisory, that's the 12th?
right,
Right.
oh, yep, that was the
Okay.
other thing I was gonna say, yeah.
So-
No, we're not gonna meet with special ed on the 13th, we have to schedule a meeting,
Yeah.
with you.
Right.
So that's special ed, and then December 12th, we do have the meeting with, this advisory committee, education subcommittee, 6:30 to 7:30. I will confirm the room. They have their advisory committee that night at 7:30, so it'll be a prompt hour-long meeting. But we'll do our introductory meeting for the year, and my goal is to update the 5-year vision document, to have the attachments put into it with the historic budget information and the enrollment data, and update some statistics on that, so that that's the next stage of completeness for that project.
Katie is updating already, Kate, the enrollment charts that we put into the budget
Okay.
for,
Good.
with this year's October one.
And then I also wanted to share with everybody that last Tuesday, I filled in for Michelle that Hingham Ed Foundation, and Jamie was there. Hingham Ed Foundation launched their campaign for fundraising for the Code Red program, as they call it, but the computer programming initiative to support the computer programming in the schools. And they had a really great turnout of people, as this was their initial launch, and Jamie explained the program, and people were very excited about that, and Katie Roberts was there as well, and Jamie explained how this was, you know, the K through 5 introduction, and some of the devices were on deck, and then he took everyone through the professional development plan for the teachers to integrate across the district. And he talked about, we were conscious of sustainability, and so that the focus on professional development, which is what we had talked about, and that went over very well with the people in attendance too. They really felt like this was thought out, it was a comprehensive program. So Hingham Ed Foundation is very aggressive with their goals for fundraising. 180 days, $180,000, so we'll see. Hopefully they come through, but anything they can provide for this initiative will be beneficial. So
and they actually fully funded the phase 1 rollout of the, we will, there will be more information coming in January. So the CS lesson is computer science, and the lessons launch across K to 5 in January. So that's why we haven't heard a lot about it, is they're still in pilot testing mode and making sure that all the devices are ready to go. It's one thing when it's one-on-one, it's one thing when it rolls out to 25 kids all at the same time. So they have been selected sort of pilot test classes, K to 5, who have been piloting the lessons, and they're ready for launch in January. So there will be a Dear Community letter coming about computer science education. We'll be launching our CS website in January to all coincide with the launch of the elementary lessons K to 5. Our computer science teachers have been working for over a year with Katie on the development of our new CS initiative. And so we're incredibly proud of the work that they've been doing, and look ahead to a really bright future with more kids getting access to CS education.
There's some good information on the Hingham Ed website, and some information on how to donate if anyone out there wants to do that. Yeah.
So for the community, if Hingham Ed is knocking on your door,
yes,
we support your
and related to that whole area of technology, particularly at the elementary school. I've had several very positive reports about the young man that we hired to be our technician, and Joe feels he's worth more than we're paying him, so you'll hear about that later. But really doing a lot of the things that needed to be done, and therefore allowing the technology specialists to be more involved in dealing with the kids and teaching and contributing to this effort than they would be able to be if we didn't have him. So, you know, that was a good decision, something we waited a couple of years to get, but really, and a good find of a local Hingham High School student, again, who's...
and that's really goes to the, I mean, we want to thank the school committee for that, because had you not made that a priority in the budget, we would not have been able to roll out our computer science work, right? Because when we talked about we need to be in to teach and not be pulled for, so the break fix Colin has been a really, so thank you for that. It's been allowed us to do a lot of great things.
Right. And has it been rolled out to the teachers yet that there will be no mini grant?
Yes.
Any major grants?
I think they were informed.
I don't want to say it's a casualty because we've got such a great thing
for a while
going.
now.
But it is a fact that that will defer at least for this year, or maybe longer. The grant program that's always been so popular. But
it will be coming back. It's just on a deferment while they fund an initiative, and then they're going back. They did a similar work a few years ago with the smart boards.
Yeah.
Right, where they sort of focus on that, and then they're repeating.
Sometimes it's good to take a breath and
Absolutely.
you come up with new ideas. Okay. So next on our agenda is adjournment to an executive session. not to return to open session for the purposes of approving minutes of the executive session of the school committee held on November 20th, 2017, discussing collective bargaining and the memorandum of agreement for the paraeducators, HEA Unit B, discussing collective bargaining with the custodians and maintenance workers association, the public discussions of which may be detrimental to the committee's bargaining position. So,
I'll make a motion that we move to executive session
okay.
for those reasons.
Second.
Second?
Oh,
Okay.
no, come on, there was like 4 of you.
All those in
I
favor?
heard Aileen first.
Michelle. Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Thank you.